We start with breaking news on the coronavirus outbreak. Confirmation this afternoon, a 70-year-old woman who was on board the Ruby Princess cruise ship, which docked in Sydney last week, has died from the infection. She's become the 8th Australian victim of the disease. There are now more than 800 confirmed cases in New South Wales. That's risen by 149 patients overnight. 60,000 people have been tested and cleared. Well, the Prime Minister's War Cabinet meets tonight to work out the next crucial move to try and beat the crisis. Let's go to our political reporter Fiona Willan in Canberra. Fee, good afternoon to you. More restrictions could be on the way.
Well, Davina, I think the thing to keep in mind is that we're still in stage one of all of this. So all of the restrictions we've seen, all of the changes to our lives, they're still part of the very first stage. And overseas, of course, we're seeing full cities sent into lockdown with people only allowed out for essential services. The Health Minister, Greg Hunt, said the next stages for Australia are now being designed. The timing and the implementation of those are being carefully considered. So no doubt those will be discussed by the National Cabinet when they meet tonight. So that's made up of the Prime Minister, the Chief Medical Officer and state and territory leaders. Today, the Health Minister has really stepped up his tone and his messaging around social distancing and also the need to self-quarantine.
House parties, they're out. They are out. Let me be absolutely clear on that. If you are diagnosed and given a positive test, go straight home. I am staring down the barrel of the camera and saying, go straight home.
So Greg Hunt also gave a bit of an update on testing in Australia, so I'll run you through those figures. So there have now been 147,000 pathology tests in Australia. Around 98% of those have come back negative. He made the point that we actually have the lowest rate of positive test results of any major country, and we've ordered 1.5 million point-of-care tests to test healthcare workers. One question that has come up a lot is how well prepared we are to deal with people who do end up in intensive care. Take a listen.
Currently, there's a standing capacity of about 2,000 ventilators through the ICU beds. We are looking to double that. Work is being done, led by the Chief Scientist, Alan Finkel, in conjunction with others, on Australian production, which could add an additional 5,000 invasive and non-invasive respiratory and ventilator units.
Now, we also have a bit of an update today on the MyGov website. Yesterday it became overloaded with people logging in to try to access benefits.
We had 100,000 people trying to be on the system at one time. They have increased the capacity to 150,000 at any one time.
But it appears that still isn't enough because this afternoon many people are logging in to find that it's unavailable.
And that's really, really not good news. OK, Fiona, stand by for more on that throughout the afternoon. Thank you. Well, there has been a heartbreak outside Centrelink offices across Sydney, lines stretching for hundreds of metres as people race to secure funding. It's forced the government to issue new advice for anyone seeking assistance.
You can ring up any of our Centrelink call centres. You can say, identify yourself. We will not require you to provide any physical demonstration. We will only require you to actually advise us, and we'll take your word for it, understanding these are exceptional circumstances and we don't want people attending Centrelink sites in person.
Let's hope people can get through on the phone. Zara James will have more details on that coming up in half an hour. Well, some children have stepped into day one of a new era in schooling. Thousands of parents have opted to homeschool, with principals handing out guidelines on how to teach. But the Premier says schools will remain open.
And let me be frank, based on health advice, we don't know what the next 5 or 6 weeks will look like. We are entering a period where our schools are about to go into school holidays, and it's appropriate for us to make sure we get the home learning up and ready. This has been a good chance for us, an opportunity for us to make sure that whether it's through web-based tools or whether it's through home learning, that we have the systems in place to support our children.
Spare a thought for HSC students. A question mark still hangs over them in terms of whether exams will go ahead. Well, despite the shutdown, the NRL has given all 16 clubs a level of security this afternoon. Danny Wadler is at Rugby League Central for us in Moore Park. Danny, good afternoon. This story is developing today. What is the latest?
Davina, there's a lot going on. I can tell you the very latest is that right now the process for the NRL is to meet with the networks that are linked with the NRL. That's the Nine Network and also Fox Sports. There'll be meetings with them for the NRL to find out exactly where they stand with each of the networks. Now, if the networks are able to give them some money in advance or look after them in some way that's going to really help the NRL situation. Obviously, though, I'd imagine that the networks would want to be seeing football on their TVs in order for payments to happen. But those meetings are probably going to take place over the next 12 to 24 hours, so very, very important for the game. The game, though, has had a good bit of news today. The NRL have said that $1.2 million per month for the next 3 months will be paid to the clubs. So there is some security there for the clubs, Davina.
Jenny, you've also spoken today about some timeframes in terms of the earliest that the season could resume and the possible latest. Could you run us through those dates?
Look, there are 4 possible scenarios that the NRL are looking at. Starting in June would be their absolute ideal situation, the game coming back in June right through to September. So there's obviously going to be different scenarios about how many games could be played in each of those situations should they come back in each of the months. Now, if they don't get back on the field by September, I don't see how there can be a competition, Davina.
OK, if there's breaking news this afternoon on the NRL, Danny Wilder will have it. Thank you very much. Well, as the country moves to work from home amid the coronavirus crisis, telecommunications companies are already struggling to cope. In the past 24 hours, they've seen a wave of complaints as Wi-Fi and wireless broadband networks slowed. Telstra users around Australia have reported issues with mobile connection problems, and Optus is also reportedly struggling.